so beautiful. And what I really want to know is what is good in your life today? I'm Kia, and this is another episode of the Female Veterans Podcast. Today, I have Kerri with me. She's super cool. She's super cool, you guys. Not only is she a Army National Guard veteran, she is a former Miss Veteran America. Super cute if you could see her. And she is the host of the Freedom Sisters podcast. So I'm super excited to have a podcasting and a veteran sister here with me today. And we're going to hear her story. Welcome, Kerri.
Hey, thanks so much, Kia, for having me. I'm really excited to sit down with you.
I'm so happy you agreed to be a guest. Thank you. So I'm going to jump right into it. And I want to know, what made you join the Army National Guard?
I love this question because it really was not in my path, my idea of what my life was going to be like. And ultimately, I decided to join the Guard because I wanted to be the hero of my own story. But the way that I got into the Guard is not your traditional way. I knew I was getting divorced. I was a young mom. I had 3 kids before I even joined the Guard. And I knew that a divorce was looming and I needed a way to provide for them with primarily I was looking for medical insurance. And so I started looking on an installation to get a job. And I went into a military board with a traditional 3 people in uniform, 4 people actually. Yeah, 4 people on the board. And I was in a suit. Like I was in a pantsuit for a job for an HR admin assistant. And they called me back 2 days later and said, "Hey, we'd really like to hire you. You scored better than any soldier that was already in. And we'd like for you to join, but you have to join the National Guard as a condition to take the job." And I was like, "Oh, I could do that. Okay, sure." And so that's kind of how it started. But ultimately, I knew I wanted something more for myself and more for my children. And college was definitely something that I wanted to finish. And I wasn't going to be able to do that with the dead end job that I was at. So all around, it just worked out for the best for my family and for my life. But ultimately, just really believe in the power of our own strength and wanted to find a way out of my crappy situation in a way that I could be the hero of my own story.
That's actually really beautiful. So you went to a job interview and then they were like, you have to join the National Guard. I have never heard of that. That's so
It's
curious to me.
It's so crazy because, like, looking at it now, I don't even know because I have done interviews to hire other soldiers to come in and take over jobs. But, on USA Jobs, it doesn't say, I mean, it probably did, but I didn't understand what it meant that you're a dual status technician. So I see a GS, general service job, and I'm thinking, okay, well, this dollar amount is way more than I'm making. Oh, and it comes with insurance. So and I already could type, like I've been taking computer classes since 7th grade. And I was like, oh, I could type. Oh, I could do this. Oh, I'm a fast learner. Oh, this is right up my alley. Oh, I was already accounting assistant for a truck driving company is what I was doing when I went to this interview. And so literally I walk into this armory and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. There's a giant flag on the drill floor, which I didn't know that that's what it was called at the time, but there's this massive American flag. And I just felt safe and there felt like some stability walking into there. And so I had on this like velvet blazer, like, I don't know, early 2000s, and which velvet's coming back. I should have kept that dang thing, but
It's so cute.
I didn't. And in that board, like when they finished, so it was a major, it was a lieutenant colonel and a E7 maybe and an E6 at the time on the board. And 3 of them are who I would end up working for directly. And at the end of the interview, who would end up being my section sergeant, I said, "Hey, pull your sleeve back," and like demonstrated like pulling my sleeve back to like towards to reveal my wrist. And I kind of thought, well, that's weird. I was like timidly doing it. And he goes, "I just want to make sure you have thick skin." And I'm like, that was like the parting conversation, right? So I'm like, this is interesting. And I really felt like I had a really strong interview, but I had never sat in front of 4 people to interview for a job ever at this point in my life. So yeah, that's kind of how the journey started. And they're like, "Come in for a PT test and see if you could even pass." And so I came in like 3 days after the initial call before I even met with a recruiter. Like, I never even talked to my recruiter until I was signing the documentation. Like, that's
Wow.
totally heard of. And I never had to do like RSP drill or any of that. I interviewed like the 17th of November. I signed my paperwork the 5th of December and I shipped the 2nd of January. Like that's
Wow.
how fast it went. And yeah, so all that to say, like I came in for that PT test and nailed it. I did like something like 83 sit-ups or something. I ran my 2 mile way under time because as a 23-year-old, I think I had to run it in like 24 minutes. And yeah, anyway, so yeah, it was like rapid fire. Can you do this? Could you succeed? And away I went. That's kind of the jumping point.
That's interesting that he was like, show me your wrist. And you're like, what? And you start doing it. He's like, yeah, I'm going to make sure you have thick skin. That could be very telling in some situations because it's sort of like that. You do need to have thick skin if you're going into the military. That's for sure. I wonder what would have happened if you were like, I'm not showing you my wrist. Do you think you would
Clearly, I
have
wouldn't
gotten
have probably got the job because, can't take orders. I
right?
mean, it was
This
weird that he goes, "Can you do this?" And so I'm like, "Of course I can move my shirt." Like I'm like,
what? What are you
"What?"
talking about?
But yeah, it was an interesting. I mean, literally, it was so fast. That is how my whole career went. It was so fast, and I was always open and willing to learn and to step into the unknown. Really, so.
That's what it's about, right? So, speaking
Mhm.
of stepping into the unknown and being that you didn't know you were joining the military when you went in for that job interview, what was boot camp like for you?
Man, I was a military spouse, so I kind of understood a little bit of the structure of some things. Not enough to know. But I had a girlfriend of mine that just came back from Air Force boot camp, and she was telling me all these things, and she said, "This is what it's like," blah blah blah. And so I'm like, okay, I can do that easy, and I don't have to cook. I don't have to clean up after anybody. I don't have to wipe anybody's ass. I just have to go, pay attention, do what they say, and survive. And so I was like, hey, this is kind of a break. Like it's weird.
I'm going on vacation to boot
But
camp.
like basic training was so much fun. Like I loved it. I was in leadership from not the very first week. We had a different female who was our PG and she got fired. And then they threw me in there and I was leadership the rest of the time. And I got so sick of hearing my damn last name that I would wake up super early in the morning so I could shower in peace because it was literally like Kerri, 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 but my last name at the time was not the same, so I'll just remove that from the conversation because it doesn't matter. But I was so sick of hearing my last name that I literally would get up at 3 a.m. to shower. So nobody, one, I didn't have to do the rotation shower, that
Yeah.
get one head, three women, and you're like rotating. I didn't have to do that, and I didn't have to hear my name. But yeah, it was super quick, and I loved it. I loved the high intensity. I loved the energy. I loved trying new things. And, I'm short. I'm 5'3". So Jacob's ladder, when you get up to the top, it's really hard for somebody my size to reach and not die. And the fact that I did that, like, just made me feel so powerful. And it made me feel like, man, if I could get over that and that's way crazy tall, then I can do anything. So it really like solidified the beginning of my like self validation journey of knowing what I'm capable of and how to overcome things that might be thrown in my way. And so I loved it. I would go back to basic training 1,000 times. AIT, different story. I hated it there, but loved basic training.
Yeah, I can't okay, I won't say that I loved basic training, but there were things about it that I really came to enjoy. For example, we were like a company that was mixed. It was called a company back when I was going to boot camp. So we had half guys and half girls. It was integrated, and we were one of these first experimental units like that. So we didn't do like the galley during our service week or we just went to clean the drill hall, and so our job was drill hall. And even then I was on the house crew, so I cleaned our racks and the whole compartment. So it was kind of easy, right? Like, and then for the Navy, we had a lot of classes, and wasn't expecting that. I was expecting much more physical activity. And so to find out that half of our day is going to be classes, I was like, oh, okay.
Hmm.
I love this. Oh, naval history. Yay. I like was really excited about that kind of thing. And then every weekend we were in charge of doing the graduation ceremony. And my job in particular was to make Kool-Aid for the officers and the officers lounge, right? And so after that, so I was like hostessing a party like every week in boot camp. And then at the end of that, there was always cake every week. So when the officers were all done, there'd always be a ton of cake. And then they'd be like, okay, you guys did a good job, have cake, have Kool-Aid, and we'd like hang out for like another hour and eat cake. So like, but the other thing is something really incredible happened for me in boot camp too that made me feel really empowered. And for me, it was the 20-foot drop off the diving board into the tank that we have to do to simulate jumping off the side of a ship. And I was terrified of that. And I'm not scared of heights or anything, but I remember climbing up and the whole way up, climbing up, like feeling so much anxiety and so much fear about what I was about to do, but knowing that there was no way that I was not going to do it. Right. So it's so like, that's so the military, like knowing you have to do something really scary, but you're going to do it, but it's really scary.
Yeah.
So but you just do it somehow. And that was the thing for me, was getting to the top and watching everyone go. And then it's my turn. And then I was just thinking, oh my God, this is so insane. I can't believe I'm going to do this. And then it was my turn and I just went and I did it. And I was like, oh my God, when that was done, I was like, I can do anything in the world. I'm unstoppable. That's what I was thinking.
I hate water. So maybe if I had to join the Navy, I probably would have thought twice of it in case I would have become a member on the ship. But for officer candidate, we didn't have to do anything in the water for basic training.
Mm-hmm.
But officer candidate school, we sure did. We had to swim like 20, whatever, the whole length of the pole with the rifle over our head. We had to jump off the diving board, the high one with a blindfold. And then you had to you had to ditch that. And then you had to like pick up a weapon. Like it was crazy. And I did that. And so I could totally attest to like that crazy amount of fear. Like one, I am a shitty swimmer, but I have to do this. So I'm a pool girl all day long, but you'll catch me on the shit, the like hanging out on the lounge. I'm not in there like swimming laps and stuff.
Right on. Yeah, I feel that. I love the pool. I do like to swim. So it was cool. That's why the Navy was a cool choice for me. But I really didn't make that connection until I was on that diving board of this is real. Like you could have to, like Pearl Harbor happened. Like you could have to like abandon ship.
Scary, right?
And like jump off the side of a carrier or some type of frigate or something. So it was real. And once you realize that you're in that real situation, that's actually a possibility, your perspective starts to shift. I don't know about doing it blindfolded. That might have been a bit much for me. I mean, I guess judging by my history in the military, I would have done it. Yeah. But the idea of doing it even right now is like, oh my God, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that rank, I think, was a motivator and just the extra opportunity. Like, I'm not going home without this. I am not leaving this juncture without coming home and showing my babies. We did it, like your support and you guys doing your piece of the puzzle and getting your schoolwork done and all of that. Mom did her part, and so there was always that extra level of, you got something bigger than just diving off. I would never have dove off. Like going in feet first was maybe the saving grace to that whole situation. But, there was that too. So somebody else was depending on me to succeed so we could be in a better position.
I feel that. So you said that you didn't like AIT, right? Mm-hmm. So after boot camp, let me back up. Did you make any good friends while you were in boot camp?
Yeah, I actually still talk to Liv Abreu. She's one of my very dear friends that I made at basic training. And I'm trying to think if she's actually the only one. The rest of them, I think, came from AIT. Oh, Marla Sue from Texas. Her and I still talk to. And so, I guess only 2 of them from basic training. And one of my drill sergeants, believe it or not, and his wife, she was actually a drill sergeant in the same company, different platoon, but Drill Sergeant Cool Seth and his wife, Erica Bravo. I'm totally name dropping because they're cool as shit. I talk to them still like on Facebook and stuff, and that's kind of fun. So out of that, just those four.
That's amazing. I always love that because I am not in any contact with any of the girls I went to boot camp with, and I loved them. So I'm always like, this is like my shout out to them at every single episode.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really special relationship because after those weeks together, you started as strangers, and it doesn't matter where you came from in the United States. After those 8 weeks, it feels like sad to leave boot camp because you're leaving family behind, it feels like.
Yeah, totally.
So let's move on to training. So we call it A school, and you guys have AIT. So what was that like for you?
Yeah, so advanced individual training was literally I packed up my bags and we did get a truck drive down the road because I just went up the road from basic to AIT in South Carolina at Fort Jackson for human resources. And again, it was part of this program, this fast track. And fast track was instead of like 12 weeks, it was 7 weeks maybe. And so total training altogether was like 15 weeks. Basic training was longer than AIT. But down there, down the road, I showed up with quote unquote leadership experience, but the female drill sergeant down there hated my guts. Like I had to look like the girl that beat her up in high school or something. Like she had it out for me. On the schoolhouse, they wanted me to be leadership. But when we were marching back to the barracks, the company area, I was not allowed to be in leadership position. I was just following the ranks. So it was weird because at the schoolhouse, I was class leader, which is normally the PG. And then the PG is like in charge back at the barracks. So, I mean, it was okay. I hated it. I hated fire guard. I actually got caught sleeping on fire guard, which is, I mean, it makes sense why we need it, but at the same time, like modern technology too, like you have a fire alarm, we really don't need fire guard anymore. But I had this chick, she was on recycle actually, and so I probably never should have trusted her. So I guess a lesson out of it was like, be careful who you trust, even in uniform. But she was like, hey, I'm going to sleep this hour. You could sleep, the first half hour, I'll sleep the second half hour or whatever. And so she got her 30 minutes hour sleep. So when it was my turn, guess what she did? That girl went to another room and went to sleep too. So neither one of us were on post. And we got fire guard for a week. Talk about being tired and still having to function. But thank God I didn't get recycled over that because that would have sucked. But yeah, so I mean, I just didn't like it because there was so much downtime and they still they treated you like you were scum and they didn't treat you like soldiers yet, but yet here you were learning the next phase. It was like because they were so close to basic training, it just seemed like, oh, we're going to stay in that mindset. But so I didn't really like AIT. It was like, get my stuff done, do my academics, clean my room, and stay out of trouble. And that's really all it amounted to be. And, I was older, so I had kids and I was still technically married at the time and stuff like that. And so when they all would like want to go party on the weekends and that pass, and I was like, I'd rather just like go play bowling and come back here and just sleep. But you don't want to be there because it's so crappy. So you're like, well, where do I go? And so I don't know. I just didn't like it. I would rather if you're like in this environment, just stay focused and have it be all the time. And it was like they were kind of festering this environment where you could get in trouble for no reason. And then they like lay the hammer down on you. But I just didn't like the environment. I didn't like that she didn't like me. I took that very personal because I was like, what did I do? Like, what did I do? I didn't quite understand, but whatever. I mean, I survived, but it was so boring. You went from this like high octane to academia only, but you still had to like do all the PT and I don't know. I guess I'm really thankful that I went National Guard because I didn't have to deal with that active duty mindset all the time, even though I wore the uniform all the time in the Guard.
Right on.
Yeah.
I loved hospital corps school. We had like this brand new beautiful barracks at the time, and we had 3 instructors or maybe 4. I feel like I'm missing somebody, but I know the female chief didn't. I don't think she was feeling me. But I had some drama happen while I was in corps school with my family at home, and my mom wrote to the command because I wasn't keeping in communication as much as she would like. So it was super embarrassing for me
Mhm.
because I was just trying to be independent, right? And
Yeah.
here's my mom, like, my child is missing. So she created all this drama. But I did have like I did have sort of a dysfunctional home that I had left behind. And so I was having sort of like a mental health break. And I was happy, right? To be, I was couldn't wait to get
Yeah.
on my own, right?
Yeah.
And so my chief was like, she was trying to be nice, I guess, but she was like, why don't you tell me what's going on at your home and what's going on with your life? And while most people who know me these days, now I'm a child abuse survivor. And when you go through that, you have sort of like a pervasive secrecy around your at home life,
Yeah.
and you're raised that way.
Hmm.
So I was not forthcoming. And she really took offense to that, I think. And so after that, she just sort of was, not on team Kia, let's just say. And so, but it made it a little bit more difficult. But fortunately, we had I think we had four instructors. I feel like I'm forgetting one of them. But Arnie, when Petty Officer Arnold was like my favorite, he was everybody's favorite. He was an amazing human being. I really wish could have kept in touch with him because he was what made core school so wonderful. In addition to that, we had certain liberties that other people didn't have when they were going through their A and C schools. Like we could wear civilian clothes immediately after core school was over, and then we had more of a relaxed sort of command for core school. But I definitely did go do the parties and stuff though. I was young.
I did go because my friends went, but I felt like mother hen, you know? I felt
Yeah.
like there was, I mean, I don't know, to be quite frank, there was a girl who was getting accosted on the dance floor, and like
Oh,
men from we were all in grouped, like we were all a part of this bigger company together, but she was literally, I mean, they were like inserting fingers, doing all kinds of, I
oh,
literally pulled out, I was pissed,
I would have
so
lost it.
pissed. And
Lost
here
my
I am,
shit.
23, and I was like, blah, 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 in their faces, and I put her ass in a taxi and called back to company. So people also didn't really like that because it could have been a problem. But that's one of the things about my experience in the military. Like I have some very masculine characteristics when it comes to character, when it comes to assertiveness, when it comes to leadership, which gets rave reviews when you're in the military. And so like I would stand up, and some girls didn't like that, but some of them were like, oh man, if we fall under Kerri, like she'll protect us. And so I kind of asserted myself as that because of that experience. And then I was like going all the time, like not that I wouldn't have a good time, but I was going for like a watchful eye, and there was no way I was going to let somebody be like that to somebody. I was so mad. I mean, it's still like when I think about that one particular night, but it never happened again on my watch, at
Thank
least.
goodness.
But yeah, it's crazy yeah, it just like, yep, I went to, but yeah, just that was so, I didn't like it. Like I felt like the rope was too long. It's like these young men and women still didn't have enough life experience to really be in charge of themselves. And so to allow them to like go out and maybe get in trouble or to treat each other like that was like really eye opening for me too. But
Girl, I feel you. I'm the cock blocking girlfriend. That's me. I'm the one that guys hate. If you go out with me, if we leave together to a place, we're leaving together.
yeah,
Like unless I have fully vetted out the situation. Like, and I have always been like that from very, very from like high school. I've been the mother hen. So I totally
yeah.
identify.
Yeah, and I don't know why I feel that way. Because I'm the youngest of three girls. You'd think that I'd be a little more free spirited, which I am a whole lot. But it's funny you say that because my girlfriend and I would go out dancing and stuff. And girlfriend, not like in a relationship style, but just my best friend. And we'd go dancing, and she'd be like really kind and like dance with everybody and whatever. And then like guys would come over, and I'm like, I'm not here to hang out with you. Like, oh, that's not why I'm here, you know? And she's always like, it's okay, Kerri, to just dance. It's all it is. And I'm like, I'll let you make the introduction, and then when I'm done, like entertaining them, they'll know it. Like I'm just that way. It's I don't know, right,
Me too,
wrong, or
girl.
indifferent. That's me.
I feel that. I super feel that. I mean, I'm so friendly and I would love to go dancing and stuff like that. But as soon as I'm really sensitive to energy, I didn't know that at the time, but now I understand it. And when the vibe didn't feel right to me, I was like out of there, and I would take my girls with me. Like I'd be like,
Yeah.
we're out of here. I don't feel like, or I school guys, I was never afraid of like standing up and saying, hey, you're going too far. And thankfully, I mean, I've wasted my share of drinks on guys at places that I thought were out of line. And thankfully, it could have gone wrong. They could have been like truly awful men, but nothing ever happened. I usually always then had support of guys around me
Mm-hmm.
to back me up. I had a strong network of really trustworthy men. I was very fortunate to have that in the military as well. And then make friends with people who ran the bars or who ran the clubs, and then they'd like sort of look out for us too.
Yeah.
So it was
It
fortunate.
sounds like you're really good at building relationship, which I think is like anywhere you go, whether it's podcasting or going out to like become a regular at a restaurant or something. It's like you develop this like commonality with somebody. So you have your support system. So you know, like this is a trustworthy environment and you can just keep going back to it. I've been really fortunate too to have some really good allies, male allies in my service as well. So when things were questionable, that I knew I could lean on them. And even one of my relationships was a domestic violence situation. And to watch those men kind of from my unit rally around and really stand up for me and like make me feel safe and comfortable, that was such a life giving experience to really kind of navigate those really scary times.
Yeah, I can just imagine. And when it works the way it should work, it's a really, really beautiful thing.
It for sure.
And it's when you get, the groups of guys that like the guys on that dance floor. You know what I mean? When you fall into a base that has more of those guys than the good guys, that's when we see a lot of the things that go wrong.
Mm.
That's when they do. So I want to know more about your active duty experience. Once you transitioned you were fast tracked through training. And so what was it like when you became, officially like staff on a base?
Yeah, it was really wild. There was so much that I was a dual status technician. So you work full time, and dual status is somebody who's getting paid in the GS world, like a normal federal job, and then you have your commitment to the guard. But you wear the uniform full time, so you're always addressed by your rank. And so I was able to get in there and prove myself fairly quickly. And like I said, I just like want to learn and I absorb information really well. Well, we were transferring over from the old paper system into what is called iPerms in the Army, which is like your permanent electronic records management system or something like that. And there wasn't like the matrix wasn't built. Like here's the system, but then how the flow works and the name of the documents really weren't there. And so, I kept reaching up to state level. I was at a battalion level, so it goes battalion, brigade, and then state for the guard. So I got the permission from my brigade, who was an E8 that ran that section, and she was like, "Yeah, sure, work directly with Sergeant Strayhorn." And it's so weird, you remember these names. So I was working with her, and she wasn't like really giving me any kind of feedback, and so I just started creating the dang thing myself because I had to do 200 plus records, and if I'm not given the tools, like I had to create a way. So it was this problem, so like problem solving and really being able to tap into that. And they gave me that liberty to like figure it out because we were the first then battalion in the whole state to have all of our records done because we basically created the solution to it. And so out of that, they promoted me from PFC to specialist. I made really fast. And then they actually gave me corporal, which doesn't happen that often in the Army anymore. And so then as a corporal, I ended up having like 2 soldiers underneath me, and they were part of my team, and that was just for the guard weekend because I was the lowest on the totem pole during the week and stuff like that. So that was kind of fun. And then officers who I had to deal with, like the colonel on down, because everybody had to come through my station to give me their records and put them and get everybody's information. And so I really just made a name for myself. Well, all these officers and pilots were coming through and meeting me and stuff like that, and they were like, "You should become an officer." Like, well, what are you doing? This is like whatever. And so, I don't even remember. 2009, I went and commissioned. So in 2008, so less than 2 years of being in, these men and women were like, "Oh, maybe you should really consider officer candidate school." And then the position of like the HR S1 was constantly in revolving door because the pilots would get in, they'd get a job on the flight line, and then the office would be empty again. So then we'd be without a quote unquote leader, like without an officer again. And so it just kind of created itself this pathway of, hey, there's an opportunity. She's got some college. I scored high on the ASVAB. There was just all these things that, which I did. I had to go to MEPS, even though like it was weird. I still had to go to MEPS and do all of that stuff that a traditional enlistee would do. So take the ASVAB, do all that. And so my ASVAB scores were high. So it just kind of created this perfect storm for me to walk into. And so then I went to officer candidate school, and that was fast track too. There was in the Guard, you could do two ways. If you qualify, not everybody gets the 60-day track. You have to meet so many requirements and expectations to do that. Or there's the 18-month program. And I taught that later in my career. And there is no way in everlasting hell I would do the 18-month program, knowing what I know on this side. But you go and you like have to set up your locker and you have to get in that basic training mindset 1 week in a month. I just don't know that I could have navigated those waters. So yeah, my active duty time in uniform was really, what could I learn? How can I better the process? Not what's in it for me, but like, what can I do to make this better and make this worth my time? Like they're getting their time out of me. So when opportunities presented themselves, like combatives and going to learn combatives had nothing to do with my job, but we needed a combatives program. We needed somebody on the full-time staff to run it. And I was like, send me. And ultimately, honestly, combative saved my life with that same domestic violence relationship that I was in. And so it was like, I took the opportunity, but it didn't not only help the Army meet their readiness, but it also helped me personally to survive and taught me a whole new skill set that I've never been in a real fight before, you know? And so it's just interesting all that time. But the craziest part of being dual status in the National Guard is you work 5 days a week, but then those drill weekends where the rest of the unit shows up for muster, you work those two, but then guess what? You roll right into another work week. So sometimes you're working 12 days straight every month. And it just was so crazy, so fast, and a really good experience. I mean, I did 12 years in that kind of environment. So just openness, willing to learn, and striving to do better each step of the way, each rank, learning as much as you could to better your position. So that's kind of in a nutshell what my experience was like in uniform.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. It sounds almost in a way lucky.
Yeah, I would say fortunate. I mean, it didn't always pan out the way that I wanted. So, like I was saying, hey, that officer job was always a revolving door. So they came to me, my XO, AO, admin officer, executive officer came to me and was like, hey, this is Kerri's plan, and this is what we see happening. Are you willing to take this job? And how do you feel about now having to supervise the people who have been your leader? And it's like, well, we should be able to separate personal and professional like we always have at this juncture. It really doesn't matter. Like they've given me opportunity to lead in other things. There wasn't a real hiccup to me I didn't feel. Well, at OCS graduation from the course, they came down to Alabama and they're like, oh, how do you feel about deploying and how do you feel about moving 3 hours away? And I'm thinking, this is not Kerri's plan. Like y'all said, I bought a house, my kids were in school in this community. I had just gotten divorced. So it was like all this stuff. And so I felt like my personal life was already kind of unrest. And now you're going to make my professional life be at unrest. And so I was really upset. But here's what ended up happening. I didn't get the S1 job at the unit that I was slotted. They literally changed my orders. They backdated my orders and it was so shady. I'm so glad to be out of that unit, but that was my unit. That was the only thing I knew in the Army. And so it was crushing. But ultimately I got some captain. So I'm a second lieutenant, brand new butterbird. The captain got the aide de camp job to the tag, the general officer, the adjutant of the state. So then they needed to backfill this guy. Well, not only did I backfill him, one, he was a pilot, two, he was the commander, and three, he was the S3, full-time S3 officer. So like, I had no experience in any of that. And then they put me there to like be their S3 and their acting commander as the second lieutenant, which was
oh boy.
time, which is bull crap. So I didn't ever get even rated as a commander as a second lieutenant. So I did that for 9 months. And the whole time, this was a temporary job, right? So I moved my family 5 times in 3 years for the Missouri Army National Guard. So I am there doing this job and trying to figure it all out. The finance job at state was coming up. And there was like a connection to a connection to a connection. And so they're like, oh, hey, we hear you're looking for a job. I'll vouch for you. You have to branch finance. So then I get the finance job as a second lieutenant. I go to finance school back to South Carolina, come back, and I'm like in charge of this whole pay program for the state. We're paying like 8,000 people.
Wow.
Army, I know, crazy. DTS was standing up, your MOVE pay, your PCS pay, your TDY pay, debt remissions, which sucked. DD 93 is processing those because here we are still at war and those things happen in season.
Yeah.
And you're processing all of that as a second lieutenant. Oh, and managing 23 people. Crazy town. And so I stayed at that job for like 2.5 years, I think, and got promoted there to first lieutenant. And then the same command that I left was coming back to me saying, hey, we think we want you to be our S1 officer for deployment. And I'm thinking, okay, I'll deploy. Like it says I've been up for a couple and it's never actually come into fruition. I've gone through, the pre-deployment process before and then fell off the docket or whatever. And so I'm like, okay, well, here we go again. It probably won't happen, but sure. And funny that they wanted me to come back and be their S1 officer when they denied that. And so I said, sure, fine. Came back and became their S3 in the interim on the way up to becoming ready for deployment because I had all this experience with DTS and basically the defense travel system, stood it up for the Missouri Army National Guard, did all the training, figured out all the routings. That was relentless job that I had as the finance pay chief. And so anyway, I came back with all the skills and knowledge that they would need to be successful for their S3 to get everybody ready for MOB. And I couldn't get into the school to cross over from being a finance officer, being back to going adjunct. But there was another slot on their bill for the public affairs officer, and it was a captain slot. And I would have been up for promotion in the middle of the deployment. So I'm like, I'm going to ask. I'm going to one, see if I can get into the school. So as the S3, I emailed the schoolhouse and like, hey, how hard is it to get in? What's the requirements to get in and all this stuff. So I kind of equipped myself to go talk to the commander. And so I actually went and talked to the S1, the major who was in charge of the S1 office. And I talked to him and said, I know you guys need this position filled too. So I can't get into adjutant general school. So what about sending me to PAO school so I can still support this mission? And he was like, sure, let's try. And so then I became a public affairs officer for the 35th Combat Aviation Brigade and was the first PAO ever in aviation for the Missouri Army National Guard.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so wild. So that's like in a nutshell what I could say about, service, and especially in the Guard is like do what the Army asks of you, but then also take from the Army what's good for you too. And better your position and your experience off of that. So I went from E3 to O3 in 6 years and then deployed with that unit, did well for them. We stood up an overwater Army overwater recovery because they actually pulled our naval assets because of the downsize from Iraq into Kuwait. We're like, we're doing collabs with the Navy, but we don't have any assets to rescue our pilots if they crash in the Gulf. So
that's insane.
Yeah, totally. So we stood up a whole program, which now the big Army has adopted. The National Guard did this as a program, and the big Army now uses it still to this day. And so as a public affairs officer, I got to fly and take all the pictures and the documentation and help, them draft up that first program. So that was a lot of fun for my deployment. And then I came back and then moved across the country from the Midwest to the East Coast, and then from the East Coast over to Washington State and finished out my time in uniform here.
Wow. That is a big career that was really fast moving. That is incredible. So what kind of energy was it for you while you were serving? Like, did you have a lot of just fun times, or did you have a lot of stress? Like, I know you set up a lot of stuff, and I know that you said, you had a little shady dealings and things like that, but overall, would you say that your experience was really fun, or were you just more like nose to the grind and just moving towards progressing your career?
I would say it was probably a healthy mix of both. I think some of my personality comes with that nose to the grind task. Like, give me a task, give me a problem, and I will find a way to figure it out. But I think some of that, I felt like I had to prove myself and I needed to be there because I was the sole provider for my kids. And so it was like, okay, some of it had to be very obviously professional and to better our position. Like that at the end of the day was my ultimate goal, was to obviously provide for my family. So did I have fun? Absolutely. I mean, I loved your weekends. I loved getting all those other folks to come in. We used to have cheap beer society, CBS. Like, you literally would have to, you buy the cheapest damn beer, and at the end of the night, the first night of your weekend, so Fridays and Saturdays, you could drink as long as you showed up to work, unless there was like, don't drink this weekend because we're doing weapons qualification or something, right? So we had the cheap beer society. You throw in the crappiest, cheapest beer you can in a black bag, and you like blind take it out and drink and whatever. So there was some fun elements too. And then I became an Army instructor for OCS, and I loved that. I love helping other people, and I love them meeting their own goals and being their own heroes. And if that means I'm instructing them to get there, that was a lot of fun for me. Loved OCS, loved the team I had there. And that was in Washington State with the 205th RTI Regional Training Institute. That, besides public affairs, sharing stories and kind of seeking out really cool stories in our unit, was by far my favorite. And so those were two very fun jobs, very hard jobs, and the responsibility of sharing the story and proving the American public like your existence matters is tough, but is necessary. But it was fun because it's creative. And then, training tomorrow's leaders, that by far was the most rewarding experience of my career. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, you're out shooting weapons still and swimming and, pulling some cool, dumping over lockers and throwing things around and getting in people's faces and creating stress and stuff. And that was a lot of fun. So I would definitely say it was a healthy mix. But at the end of the day, it was like business first, family first. So mission and family always kind of toggled with each other before fun, for sure, for me.
That's awesome. What do you think was the most fun part of the public relations job?
By far, the USO, working with the USO, when I was deployed, Hollywood people would come through. And so like my favorite experience and memory is, do you remember Spartacus? I think it was Spartacus. Spartans. I think it was Spartacus.
The TV show.
The TV show. I never
used to
watched
watch it.
it.
I used to
Okay.
watch that.
So
Yeah.
those gladiators came to us. The Spartans came and did a USO tour. Well, I was able to get a Black Hawk ride for them, and they never had been in a Black Hawk. So we actually got in trouble. The pilots actually got reprimanded for the type of flight we did, because it was the funnest flight I have ever been on. They were like dropping us and doing, tight turns that they probably shouldn't have been doing. And I mean, so Mano Bennett is his name. He was like grabbing my leg and screaming, and I think it was so funny. And I just remember watching their faces just be like of sheer joy. And so that was probably my favorite experience, hands down, of any like adventure I had. That flight was by far the best. But the best part, really, I mean, I'm doing it today. I'm a storyteller. I love hearing other people's journeys and be able to pull out the things that maybe they don't even feel are important in their story and share it with the world. The married couple who's on deployment, or the Missouri Tiger mascot that's now a National Guard soldier, and share those stories. And it kind of takes the illusion of that we're not humans inside the uniform, and it really develops these relationships and this human connection with the rest of the general public. And I love that part, because beyond the rank, like underneath this, we are not exempt from the human experience. And to be able to share those stories with the rest of the world was another really amazing part of being a public affairs officer.
It is beautiful because it's the stories that connect us. and inspire us. And I think that's so important. It's so necessary. I think, especially when people don't really, there's a culture of silence around military service in general. So people who have not served don't really understand what we experience, whether the experience is good or bad. And so I think being able to bring those stories out and share them with the world helps everyone to understand us a little bit better and sort of take some of that. Sometimes there's a little bit of fear of the veteran, and it sort of takes that away when you see, well, we're just living a life. When I tell people I served in peacetime, and the experience is quite different. So for me, when I tell people, well, it was like having a job. I mean, I donned my uniform, I left my apartment in the morning, I went to work. At the end of the day, I took off my uniform. Even before I left work, I was in my civilian clothes and I drove home to my apartment. It was just like, but I was serving, and I was young, and I had a well-paying job and an apartment and a car. Like, I was on my feet. I was able to take care of myself. You were able to take care of your family, as a young woman and at a young age, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really empowering. So I love that. I agree
Yeah.
wholeheartedly. Sharing the stories is amazing.
Absolutely. And not to say that it wasn't stressful. I tell my kids this all the time, when they were little, I hope I don't make this look that easy that you want to become a teen mom, because it was such a hard experience. For 8 of my 12 years, my 12-year career, I was a single mom.
Mhm.
And so that was like, we were it, like we were all we had. And so it was very stressful at certain points, but it was out of a need that this opportunity presented itself, and I took it. And then leveling up each time, it was like, okay, the kids are getting bigger, they're eating more, I'm moving again, I need a new car. I have to say this, like, I always opened our doors to, I wanted to be the house that other kids wanted to come to, because I knew I was safe. Like, I knew kids could come to my house and there would be a little bit of respite if, we lived kind of, the army isn't one, it's not like the elite, really. It's, there's a lot of people that struggle financially and are in poverty that serve. And so, like, as a single mom, I wasn't able to like rent in the expensive part of town. Like, I was,
Right.
still living from paycheck to paycheck and whatever. And so, like, I wanted to open my home. Anyway, I would cook for other kids in the neighborhood. They were always welcome. They could have sleepovers. They could do all of those things too. And I needed 4 new tires. Like, my car needed complete set of tires, and I didn't know how I was going to pay for that. I was going to go to Les Schwab and, get, which they didn't have Les Schwab in Missouri. I did not know that. I thought it was like a nationwide thing, but no, it's clearly a Pacific Northwest company. But so I was just going to go to Les Schwab and try to get a line of credit, right? Well, I went to have the tires put on my car, and I had to go in uniform because I had like only a limited amount of time. I couldn't change. And then somebody saw me there and bought the tires. And like that, to me, like little stuff like that is like such a gift that otherwise it would have potentially broke me, that it was so
It was
stressful,
a
but
gift.
so
Amazing.
sweet. And I never knew who did that for me, but it's something that I remember very dearly because I'm helping in my way, and it's like a gift from heaven. All good gifts come from above, And so this person met my need, and they didn't even know that. They were just,
Mhm.
patriotic potentially, and saw, a young soldier needing tires and did it. So sweet. But yeah, most of the time it was good, but there was a lot of stress and keeping all of those, tasks and balls in the air. About my personality, like, I'm best when my plate is full. And so that really helped me also to succeed because I knew where each little task, each little portion fell on that plate, So anyway,
So tell me, it sounds like such a wonderful experience, but I want to know what your biggest obstacle was when you were in public relations.
my biggest obstacle when I was in public relations would probably have to be proving that my stories were relevant and getting them into the media and how to do that. You have to not only pitch the stories to your command, you have to also vet them through the higher PAOs, and then really get them into the media. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. And so I think the hardest part was really proving yourself that here you are, just a soldier that went to a training, which the training is phenomenal. DINFO's, the Defense Information School, is phenomenal. And they teach you journalism. It's a college level course and stuff. But yeah, I think that would have been the most difficult, is to prove that. And then the other thing would be, the most difficult thing, as now I'm recounting, is an experience that I had as a public affairs, and that was reporting to an emergency duty here in Washington State in 2014. The Oso mudslide happened, and I was there, like
Oh my goodness.
first on ground. It definitely, that by anything else that happened in my career, that's the quote unquote trauma of my career, was that event, that experience, because these men and women were out there looking for their own friends and family.
Oh my God.
And it went very quickly from a search and rescue to a search and recovery, and
Oh
down to like, this might be too much, but down to like body parts is how we were identifying people, not
my
full
God.
human beings, like
It's
not full.
horrible.
Yeah. And so it was very eerie out there. It was very, very chaotic and busy. And then each time we would find something, everything shuts down. And then there was this moment of silence. Helicopters wouldn't even come through. And so there was a lot of like tragedy and sadness. But then there was like on the other side of the mountain where the landslide, like full pieces of furniture were coming out, wallets were coming out unscathed, baby blankets full unscathed. And it was just like, when I even wrote about it, that was one of my stories, was like, there's this destruction, but then there's this hope of, we're going to have the answers. There's still, life is still going to go on for the families that did survive. But man, I carry that with me so much. And there's parts of it that are a little harder. Like there was a baby that was recovered that was really, really traumatizing. A little boy that, was the same age as my son, and his like personality and all the stories we were running about him really reminded me so much of my own kids. Then to go home after that and be able to hug my babies just a little tighter, it was just like, life is so fragile. And so that was the hardest, was to share the heartache of that story, and to have to perform, right? To not just get in and get the emotional connection to these people because you were in it with them and you were doing the recovery. You were in, I have waiters, we were in waiters because of, like, you have to think about, I mean, the land came down through the valley up to the other side of the hill and then rolled itself back up like a curve.
Oh my God.
So you're talking like sewage and gas and propane and household items and bodily fluids and like everything that goes into a house, electricity, all the things. And so how gross and disgusting, but also how like tragic and sad. But then your stuff, like your team's stuff, is going all the way to SecDef, like international news, and you have to perform. And so I think that was definitely, that would have to be the hardest part of being public affairs, is that you have to be in the tragedy, you have to be in the hard story, but yet you still have to tell the story. That would definitely be the hardest.
Wow. So I know that must be your saddest story, but what was your favorite story?
My favorite story would have to be commissioning, like seeing the challenge, taking the 60 days away from my kids to really believe in myself. Like I had already done what I said I was going to do, right? I already said I was joining the army. I was going to take care of my kids. This was like the icing on the cake. And then to really better our position that way. And so, getting that first salute and getting that silver dollar, which is kind of a tradition, and having my kids there to like witness all of that and see like, this is possible. Like, look at our mom. Like, it wasn't the fact like brass versus stripes, right? That wasn't the ish for me. The really was to show them like anything is possible. And I kind of feel like I'm still doing that with like the vision of Freedom Sisters Media and whatnot, and leaving that legacy. But I would have to say that would be my most cherished, is that very first time. And then I can look back at all of that and realize, oh man, you did it, and that's cool.
That's pretty amazing. And that you continue to do it. It didn't just end there and they get to see it. And that's amazing. I think for me, I have a 14-year-old and he started streaming, and I have a live stream show also. And about a month ago, or just before Christmas, he asked for in his Christmas list for things that he would need to stream. So I got him all this stuff, and now he's streaming because he loves the game, right? So a proud moment for me. So every time he says, Mom, I say, tell me what your schedule is. And every time he's like, Mom, I have to stream today, I get like so much
Oh,
joy
I love
because
that.
I'm like, yeah, he's seeing me do it and he's doing it now. And he sees that if you just put the work in, good things will come from it. So I totally feel you on that. And since you were mentioning officers training school and that you taught there, I wondered what was your biggest obstacle in that part of your career?
I don't think I actually had an obstacle. I was sought out to teach that. And here's why. I was the public affairs one year for the Washington National Guard program. And somebody had said something because they didn't know me. And here I am a captain, right? And I'm getting up to brief the brigade commander on what I can do for him and what I will do for him every day, like share the story, do that. And at the end of it, I'll have this compilation piece and I've got a video guy here for you. And all this stuff. And then somebody was like, and he ended up being my friend at the end, but he was like, oh, you can always just talk to the state PAO, Captain C. Mandel or whatever. And I was like, actually, no, you will come directly to me if you guys have a request for this. And like, I just like, and I didn't think I was rude, but like, here's the thing. Like I called this guy on the carpet in a brief, like, don't do that. Like, please respect me in this position. Like, that's why I'm here. I will be talking to him directly. And the major who was in charge of OCS, because Warrant Officer Candidate School and OCS fell under the same battalion. So the company commander of OCS was like, hey, how do you feel about coming over and being an instructor? I was like, I already got my instructors. I'll totally come over and work full time for you guys. And so I left PAO, I left the PAOC and actually came over and joined their company. So they wanted that. And I think, you have to hit so many identifiers. So they needed more women over there anyway in that capacity. So I don't think I struggled getting in over there. But the obstacle that I continued to have to do was proving that I was meant to be there. And that wasn't necessarily with my team. But eventually, like I got the project manager position there to run OCS phase 3 for 48 different states. ROTC program went away. So like the second iteration, I was running the program for phase 3 and it went over really well. And I actually got out right after that program because I found myself pregnant again. And they were like wanting me to take a command, an HHC command. And then I was going to Triple C and there was a lot of stuff going on. And so they were really disappointed that I was leaving. And I'm like, look, guys, like I can't put a baby. Like I know what the up tempo of this organization is. I can't put a baby in daycare for 60 hours a week. So I got out, but that was really the ultimate reason. But I had contemplated it for some time, whether staying in was right for me, or I now had all this education and experience, maybe getting out was right for me. But yeah, I don't really feel like I had an obstacle. I'll say this funny story. So my girlfriend, she's like a sweet friend of mine still, Danielle Malash. She took the company command position as a major for OCS recently. Apparently people would call me Malash all the time or her Kerri all the time, and her last name's actually Smith now. So I'm doing her a disservice, but she like, we're not this token female. Like that's what it was like, is like, they only knew or saw us separately all the time. So they just thought we were the same person. So that would probably be the hardest obstacle, is to prove that there was really more than one of us who were just as good to do the job. But, outside of our commands, people didn't realize there was more than one. So that was probably the biggest struggle there.
Wow, that doesn't sound too bad.
I really, I think I was very fortunate. But again, I think it also comes down to my personality type. Like, what you see is what you get. And I'm not going to sugarcoat or like play a part so a guy feels superior. Like,
Get it.
I'm just the wrong girl for that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I didn't experience. Now, I'm not saying there wasn't uncomfortable situations, because there were a few, but again, finding those good men in those
Mhm.
places to kind of pepper in, so you knew who you could really rely on and who you could really be safe with, did happen. But like, not opening the door to that, because I would, you know,
Shut it
I was
down.
that whatever. We have three things we could fall into, and I was definitely the B, and I'm okay with that.
You were that girl. I
I
love
was the
that.
yeah. So
I'm that girl too. I mean, I can take a dirty joke. So I mean, those don't offend me, but
same.
definitely I think it's a personal thing. Like I was the girl who would go, that offended me if it offended me. Like I was the girl who spoke out. But fortunately for a lot of guys that I serve with, I wasn't easily offended by a lot of
Yeah.
things. Like I was super open-minded about a lot of things. So there were only one or two times that I ever felt really uncomfortable. So I count myself lucky, especially hearing so many of the stories that I hear
Mhm.
on my show, you know, but it's a real sad state of affairs that there has to be like this, that girl sort of
Yes.
situation
Yeah.
anyway, at this stage of the game. Right.
Totally. And I do believe that's the thing. Like, I mean, I do believe our sisters when they're saying that those ugly things happen to them. And, as a part of my character is like, I root for the underdog. I want justice and equality and equity and inclusion for everybody. And there is a way to get it without being, I don't know, corrupt and without being like, there is a way to get it in a good way. And there is a way to serve without risk of, jeopardizing your own life. And so I have found myself a lot of the times in the fight, even though like it's not really, not that it's not my place, but it's not my battle, but I'm there. Like I will toe that line with you and I will go to the front lines to fight because I think it's bullshit. And I really think that, it shouldn't be an occupational hazard. You shouldn't have to be that girl, that bitch to have a successful career in the military because you don't want to date somebody or whatever. And you
Mhm.
see a lot of the times it's always like I won't say always, a lot of the times it's an ego wound and then they just take what they want anyway. And I'm like, that's not how the world works. Like, and or out of the uniform. You don't just take what you want. You earn what you get. So there's that too. But yeah, it sucks. It breaks my heart every single time somebody comes on my podcast with that story or reaches out to me to help write another press release to help get justice for for somebody who's currently experiencing a military sexual trauma issue. But it is something that's it's a real thing. It's a real battle that does need to be won. And I do feel like we will win the war. I really do feel like we will.
Oh, it's a given. It's just a matter of time, in my
Mhm.
opinion. And the more we talk to these girls, our sisters, and share their stories and make, the public aware and make, the powers that be aware that, what we're talking about it, it's a
Mhm.
conversation, the more it's going to change and the more it's going to push things forward because it's just long overdue and it
It
needs to
is.
happen. So,
The shift is like this minority, when the minority reaches 25%, that's when the majority starts to not conform, but to realize that the minority, what they're talking about, should actually become the majority. We're almost there. We're at
mhm.
18, 19% of the force. And although some of my comrades are saying no enlistment, no justice, no enlistment, although I believe in I understand, I guess, where they're coming from with that. I tend to disagree with them. Just, they know this, like it's not a secret because I'm like, we are so close. Like all of the work, all of these women who have fought and have done the things to get us to this 19%, we can't just let them win. Like we have to get to that rest of that 6% so the mindset can change. And we need strong women to stay in and to mentor, and also the veteran space to advocate and change that, shape that. But we're almost there. We will get there. And, hopefully there's some good leadership coming in, but that's yet to be determined. But, it's the minority will change the mindset of the majority. It will happen.
I hope you're right. And I can't wait for that day. And I love what you said about strong leadership staying in. I actually had the pleasure of and doing an interview with Danique. And she does great work with animals and pairing up veterans. And if you're listening, you can find her episode and check it out. But she has an incredible story. She's a Navy shipmate of mine, and she was actually assaulted in the military, and she stayed in. And so when she was there when it happened to another. And because she understood the process, she was able to help this sister go through it and then get the justice that she hadn't gotten originally. And that's like, to me, that's quite some character. That's incredible, and so it's that kind of strong leadership that's needed, that you make such a powerful impact, and we help each other. Just like, we both have these podcasts to help our sisters, and to put our stories out there and to share stories with the world, and an opportunity like this for us to come together and have this conversation and join forces to sort of spread good out there is a beautiful thing. It's what needs to happen. We need to continue to help each other and to support our cause, and just create this change for our veteran sisters and our active duty sisters as well.
100%. And I've been cheering Danique on from a distance. We have had a couple of conversations, but I don't know her whole story. I just know what she's doing now, and I think that's really incredible. 100% that leadership that matters. And, mentorship, that's another part of this whole thing is like, listen to our stories so you could see the path and then reach out to us. That's the joy of this. I think the biggest joy is that opportunity to make an impact, not only for the current veteran sisterhood, but also those who are going to be coming up behind us, and
right.
taking that big sister role, I think is so important, and collaborating. I've heard about you. I've heard about your podcast long before, and I'm like, I'm cheering you on and I'm so excited. And your reputation precedes yourselves as like this amazing sister and all of this stuff. But it's like, you're not my competition. You're my collaborator. And together we are saying, and a surround sound, listen to our stories. And
That's right.
to me, it is so much more powerful when we are in this together, because it really proves to the world, like, it's not just one person saying you need to listen to us, but here we all are in surround sound. One voice starts with a whisper, and then it becomes this roar of a lion. And that's really what it's all about, is this giver's gain, and just sharing and cultivating and growing with each other. So I love it. I just
Absolutely. It's the same thing when I met Amanda Huffman. When I started, she was the only podcast that I found in this area. And she does Women of the Military. Shout out to Amanda. She's my girl. Love her.
Yeah, love her too.
And so she was who I looked to, right, when I'm getting started. And she's been an incredible friend and inspiration for me. And that's what it is about. And as I see more and more podcasts coming in this field where we're helping our sisters, it's like you said, that little whisper is becoming louder and louder and louder. And here we are all standing together, united. Nope, there's no competition. There's only collaboration, supporting each other, cheering each other on, and doing the work that's necessary to create the change we want to see.
100%.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So with that, I'm going to ask you about your transition out of the military, because I know I'm taking a lot of your time today.
It's totally fine. Yeah. So my transition, after 12 years of service, I became a mom again. So I now have 5 kids. And the same year that I transitioned out of uniform, I served as Miss Veteran America 2015 and was advocating for homeless female veterans and champion change in that realm. And what I realized about that opportunity now, looking back, was definitely a walk of obedience in my own faith. But I learned to love my sisters right where they were in their story, regardless of what they looked like, how old they were, how many kids they had, what history they had. Was there any incarceration? Was there any rape? Was there any success or whatever? It didn't matter. The end goal was, she wanted, as soon as somebody believed in her, she was willing to take that step because somebody else believed in her. And that sealed the deal for me, that I was always going to somehow advocate and help my sisters in service, period. And so then there was this weird wilderness, this 3-year hiatus where I had my 2 kids. I was home for a year. I got back involved in public service with the fire district, and I'm basically running logistics and project management and all of that for them. But I was like, there's more. I'm not done here. There's all this stuff that I have, and all this creative, energy in my being, and these big visions of what I do believe is God blessing me with these visions for our women, our community. And so I'm like, I got to do something. What is it? And so eventually, after that 3-year time period between being Miss Veteran America and starting Freedom Sisters was definitely a wilderness for me. What is it that I'm going to do moving forward? And then Valentine's Day, a special sweet gift, in 2019, I guess. Yeah, in 2019, I went to bed kind of a little discouraged. And whoever I was talking to in my dream said freedomsisters.com. And I'm like, oh, this is weird. Okay, well, I picked up my phone in the middle of the night, Googled it. Sure enough, it was a domain that was open. And so after testing, is this really a real domain? Like, is this really available? For 4 months, I started getting the feeling like I'm putting it out there in the universe far too much. Somebody else is going to pick this up. So talked to my husband and he was like, yeah, sure, I'll support you. We bought the domain because somebody very clever 16 years ago created the domain probably for $1.99 a month and then turned around and could sell it. Genius people. It is a legit
it's a business.
So if you know clever names, go buy them, be a domain creator. But anyway, so the transition to out of the uniform and then doing this, which is it's a full-time gig. It's still my side hustle, but I'm growing and developing. But that transition out was a little bit of an identity crisis because I knew I still had so much in me to give and to serve. And I still wanted to serve in a way that I would be proud of and help people in the process. And so, the podcast was the launching product. And that's still to this day, the soulful stories of women veterans to help others overcome, heal, and thrive. I love it. I love sitting down and hearing the hardships and the victories and everything in between of these beautiful souls that have done hard things and who are helping others because of what they've experienced. And COVID, I thought we were going to do a documentary, was going to be the next thing, video, photo, all this is audio, all this is just my experience with public affairs, but travel obviously didn't happen. So I was like, well, I'm still hearing there's a lot of things, a lot of difficulties for a lot of these women who are coming on the podcast. And my podcast is not a business podcast at all. We do have women who are in business, but the thing is the hardships, the victories, and watching that healing journey happen. That's the mission of the podcast. But you shut the mic down and you hear these stories of well, I just don't know how to market. I don't know how to network. I don't know how to get exposure. I don't know how to get people to come buy my product. And it's oh, well, I'm an information gatherer. Let's see what I can come up with. And I started looking for magazines, media, women veteran media. And there's a couple of quarterly magazines, but no monthly magazine and no digital only and no app. And so it just kind of continued to progress into this magazine so we shifted from documentary, which still is in the works, but the magazine first, and, did a call to action for writers, women writers who were interested in the project. I got 30 of them. I'm now down to 28, but I think that's still a really good percentage of keeping 98% of them. And we're just doing it. They believe in the sisterhood and the magazine. I'm really proud of. I might be leading the way on this, but it is definitely a love project for our community, by our community. And it's really starting to get some traction and all of that now. So I need to start developing a plan on my exit from, my other job so I could just do this all the time. And it's just really brought so much beauty and badassery to my life that I just didn't know I was missing. But my transition out of uniform itself was difficult because I never actually saw, okay, let's rewind. I never saw myself going in. And then when I was in, I saw myself going the distance, right? I never saw myself actually getting out until retirement age. And, I realized that there was a bigger calling on my life than just service in the Army. And the Army, guess what? Is still doing really great without me.
Yeah.
But now I feel like I'm walking in my purpose, and it took a lot to get there, but it all of it, I can see the full story and rewind in the rearview mirror and see this event and this service and that skill set and this project has all led me to this point to be able to lead others well, to share our stories and do all of that. And so we have so much vision for this company, and I'm really excited for what that is. And I have some really incredible women that are on my team helping make that a reality. And got a couple of beta groups going on for podcasters specifically, to see how that's going to help shape the vision for what I'm trying to create, and some entrepreneurial summits and things like that, and writing seminars. Because, even though we're already, I'd say, established, like issue 3 drops right on the 1st of March. So to say like we're established, we have a framework, but I have it full for the year. But I still have women asking me every week if they could write for the magazine, and even some men now, which I think is really kind of fun. I had a dude reach out to me because I was in the VFW magazine. He said, I'm totally comfortable with being a contributor because a lot of HER in my play on words, right? And he was like, I'll be a contributor. Like, I thought that was really kind of sweet. So to see that there's still a need for that, I feel like I'm mentoring this first group of cohort writers to be journalists. I'm taking the skills that I learned and teaching them collegiate level stuff to build a resume. So it's like, oh, well, if I'm doing it for this group, I should do a writing seminar. And whether they write for me in the end for Freedom Sisters or not, I'm still empowering them to go, take economical impact so they can provide for their families. And so we have a lot of things in the shoot that I'm really excited about, but transitional wise, I wouldn't be where I am today without the life that I lived. And that includes my time in the uniform.
It's beautiful. I am so excited for you and your magazine and everything that you're doing and the upcoming documentary. I might have one in the works myself right now.
Well, maybe we should collaborate
with the Veterans Channel. But I'm super excited for you. I cannot wait to check out your magazine. I actually just did an interview with the ladies of Avow magazine, and it was like really awesome. And to see this is a thing. This is like a movement. We are just creating so much dynamic energy around this veteran sisterhood and creating a space for each and every active duty female that's coming into our sisterhood every single day. We're growing and mobilizing, and we are going to create so much amazing positive change. We're doing it. And it's just exciting. It's so exciting to me to see it and to hear your story.
100%.
This has been so incredible. And so, wow, I have taken up so much of your time, but if you don't mind.
You said, you told me at the time, I'm like, I never talk that much. We never go that long, but geez, I mean, it's a gift, like to be able to sit down and get somebody to open up. So
well, we're just two veteran sisters hanging out, right? It's fun. It's hard to end that, right? It's an amazing time. But I do have just one more question for you, if you don't mind. So hearing your story and everything that you've experienced while serving and after, even as far as being a young mother and creating a successful life and being an incredible role model for your children, everything you've learned, what advice would you give for our veteran sisters coming up behind you?
I would say, for sure, say yes to yourself. Say yes to that calling that's on your heart, that thing that just drives you to get up in the morning. Say yes to it. Even though you don't know where it's going to take you, just say yes each and every day and commit yourself to learning what that means for your life and then acting upon it. And really, like, you might not see the manifestation happen really quickly. I mean, I'm not there yet, even in my podcast. I don't have as many people that I want to have. I don't have as many downloads yet that I want to, but I'm committed to it. I said yes to it and I'm committed to it. And so I think, that is the biggest advice that I could give anybody is just trust yourself. Just say yes to yourself, love yourself, and walk it out. Because so many amazing things happen when you are walking down the path that was designed for you, because you know yourself and you're saying yes to yourself, and just watching how life is just so beautiful. It's still hard, but it's so beautiful when you say yes to yourself and yes to your calling.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible advice. Say yes to yourself. I love that. That's self-love. And I'm all about self-love. So say yes to yourself. I'm going to take that in as well and keep that as a reminder as I go through my endeavors going forward and whatever I'm called to do. And just remember that is brilliant. Thank you for sharing it.
No, that's sweet.
And so tell me, where can we find you to follow along your journey?
Well, freedomsisters.com is a great landing page, and social media handles mostly are Freedom Sisters Media. I love Instagram. So that's like where I'm most active. I love that platform the most. But LinkedIn, if you're looking to connect professionally, you can do either. I did the call to action on Insta and on LinkedIn. But I just really, really love Instagram. So you'll see me at most active over there, Freedom Sisters Media. And then LinkedIn, it's Kerri Jeter, spelled Jeter.
Very cool. And so, everybody, you know that I will put all the links in the show description box, the show notes as we call them. And you can find Kerri there and follow along with Freedom Sisters. If you are not, you are missing out. Please go and support her, check her out, give her all that veteran sister love that we give each other, of course. And Kerri, it has been an incredible afternoon hanging out with you. We hung out before we started, and it's been so cool to just connect with you and get to know you and really understand your amazing energy and your passion. Just finally, after all this time, that we get to really hang out. So I'm so honored that you've been a guest. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Now it's your turn. You got to come on the Freedom Sisters podcast next.
Girl, you know it. Just let me know when. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank you so much for listening, for coming on this journey with me. It keeps going in all these different directions. And I'm so thankful for your support, for everyone who's donating to the show. Of course, you don't have to, but it is appreciated because it helps me keep going with what I'm doing. And all of that information is in the description box below. And you know that I am working with Hope for Veterans, a non-for-profit in Florida. So if you are in Florida and you need support and assistance, please reach out. Their information is going to be in the description box below. If you want to support that not-for-profit, the information's there also. And if you want to connect with me, the information is also in the description box. So again, thank you for coming on this journey with me. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you next time.